She said, "I'm too big for you. The ruthless boss try me," he said, as he pinned her to the wall. The elevator doors were closing when Nadia shoved her foot between them. She did not think about it. She never thought about small acts of stubbornness. They just happened, the way breathing happened, the way her mother's voice happened inside her head every time she walked into a room where nobody looked up. "Make yourself digestible, baby. Nobody likes a full meal." Nadia stepped inside with a tower of case files pressed against her chest, her bag sliding off one shoulder, her ID badge spinning the wrong way around on its lanyard. She had been in the building for 6 days. She had already memorized the fastest bathroom route from her desk, the exact time the third-floor coffee machine stopped making burnt coffee, and the name of every paralegal in the firm. She had not met him yet. That was about to change. The man already standing in the elevator did not look at her when she walked in. He was looking at his phone, his jaw tight, his coat dark and perfectly pressed in the way that required either a great deal of money or a great deal of discipline. Both, probably. He was tall the way buildings were tall, which is to say without apology, without consideration for the people around them. She pressed the button for the 14th floor. The doors closed. He still did not look up. 2 floors passed in silence. Nadia was fine with silence. She had grown up in libraries. She had done entire university terms without speaking more than necessary. She could do silence. She lasted approximately 45 seconds. "I heard the Carver deposition got pushed," she said. Not to him exactly. To the air. To the doors. Which means whoever prepped the Carver brief spent the last 4 days essentially sorting paper. "Nothing. That's rough," she continued. "I mean, not for me. I only arrived Monday, but for whoever did it." She shifted the files on her arm. "Rough." He looked up from his phone. She noticed his eyes first, not the color, the quality. Still, and very alert, like a room where all the furniture had been pushed to the walls and you could not tell if it was for a party or a fight. He said, "You talk when you are nervous." Not a question. An observation, delivered the way a surgeon delivered bad news. Gently, precisely, without any interest in softening it. Nadia blinked. "I talk when people are being aggressively silent at me." He considered her. 1 second. 2. The elevator moved upward. He said nothing else. The doors opened at the 14th floor, and he walked out without another word, without a glance back, without the basic social courtesy of a nod. She stood there for 1 second too long. Then the doors started to close, and she shoved her foot between them again. Old habit. She found her desk, dropped the files, and sat down. Her colleague Priya was already watching her from across the partition, with the expression of someone who had seen this happen before. "You were in the elevator with him," Priya said. It was not a question. "Tall man? Dark coat? Communicates entirely through loaded pauses?" Priya pressed her lips together. "What did you say to him?" "I made a comment about the Carver deposition." The silence that followed had texture. "Nadia." It was a normal comment. "What else?" "I may have also implied he was being aggressively silent." Priya put her face in her hands. "That is Raphael Voss." The name landed. Nadia had heard it 5 times in 6 days, each time from a different person, each time with the same involuntary lowering of the voice, as though the name itself had corners, and they were trying not to cut themselves on it. Managing partner. 11 years at the firm, 7 as partner. Turned down a federal appointment once because, according to rumor, he found the hours inconvenient. Won 4 cases in the last 2 years that nobody thought were winnable. Did not attend the holiday party. Had never, in the memory of anyone currently employed at Voss and Aldred, raised his voice. He did not need to. That was the thing people always said. He did not need to. "People do not talk back to Raphael Voss," Priya said. He made an observation about my conversational patterns. "What did you say?" I corrected him. Priya looked at her for a long moment. "You corrected Raphael Voss. It was not a big deal." "It is, though," Priya said quietly. "It genuinely is." Nadia clicked her pen. 3 times. Fast. She did not know she was doing it. She pulled the Carver file toward her and opened it. Names, dates, precedents. The clean architecture of argument. She was good at this. Better than good. She had known since her second year at university that she could read a case the way other people read maps, finding the shortest route between 2 points, noticing the road that everyone else had driven past. That was why she was here. Not because she was easy to manage, not because she made herself small, because she was good. She reminded herself of this regularly. It was a recent habit, the reminding. She was still deciding whether it counted as confidence or just a very structured form of anxiety. Her phone buzzed. An internal message from the assignment system. She stared at it. The Carver brief had just been reassigned to her desk. Not to a senior associate, not to anyone with a title that would make this assignment make sense. To her. She looked at the file, then at the message, then across the open floor toward the glass-walled office at the far end of the corridor, where Raphael Voss had already settled at his desk, jacket off, sleeves pushed up, reading something that commanded his total attention. He did not look up. He did not need to. Nadia clicked her pen again, tucked it behind her ear, and opened the brief. She had 72 hours. If she assumed the standard turnaround, she would do it in 60. She would do it correctly. She would find what no one else had found, because there was always something no one else had found, and she was the kind of person who looked until she found it. Her mother had meant it as a warning. Make yourself digestible, baby. Nadia had spent 27 years trying to understand why a person would want to be digested. She opened the first page. Read the first paragraph. Her pen was already moving. Across the floor, through the glass, Raphael Voss turned a page. Neither of them looked up. The building went on around them, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the low, steady hum of people working inside a machine built to win. Outside, London moved in its usual gray and relentless way, taxis and rain and the smell of coffee from the cart on the corner. Nadia did not notice any of it. She had found something on page 9. Something small, something that had no business being there. A case citation from 2009, buried in a footnote, referenced incorrectly by every brief that had come after it. The kind of thing that looked like nothing, until you followed it back to its source and realized it changed the entire framing of the argument. She sat very still for a moment. Then she wrote it down. Then she kept going. By the time she looked up, the floor was half empty. The light outside had gone the thick orange of late afternoon. Her coffee was cold. Her hand hurt in the specific way it hurt when she had been writing for a long time without stopping. She did not mind any of it. She straightened the pages, clipped them together, set them on the corner of her desk with the particular care of someone placing something fragile on a shelf. Then she looked across the floor. The glass office was dark. He had already gone. She picked up her pen, clicked it once, slid the brief into its folder and pulled on her coat. Tomorrow he would read it. Tomorrow he would see the footnote. Tomorrow he would understand that the person in the elevator who talked too much and made comments about deposition schedules had also found the one thing in the Carver case that 3 senior partners had walked past without seeing. She did not let herself think about what he would do with that understanding. She pressed the button for the ground floor. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in alone this time. The ride down was quiet. She did not say a word. He read the brief in the morning. She knew because he called her in at 9:15, which was 12 minutes after she had arrived, which meant he had either read it very early or had been waiting. She chose not to think too carefully about which one. His office was the kind of room that made you aware of your own breathing. Floor-to-ceiling glass on one side, the city spread out behind it like something he owned. Dark wood desk, no photographs, no plants, one shelf of books that looked red rather than decorative, their spines broken and bent, the way books became when someone actually used them. He was standing when she walked in, not sitting behind the desk the way she had expected, standing at the window, jacket on, hands in his pockets, looking at nothing in particular. He said, without turning around, "Close the door." She closed it. "Sit down." She sat. He turned then and walked to the desk, but he did not sit behind it. He stood at the corner of it, close enough that she had to tilt her chin slightly to look at him properly, which she suspected was intentional. He was the kind of man who thought about geometry. He picked up the brief. Her brief. He held it the way you held something you had read twice. The footnote on page 9, he said. Yes. The 2009 citation. Whitmore versus Aldgate Properties. The version referenced in every subsequent brief is a misreading of the original ruling. The actual judgment was narrower than anyone treated it, which means the opposing argument in the Carver case is built on a foundation that does not hold. He looked at her. The look lasted long enough that she picked up her pen from her lap and clicked it once, very quietly, before she could stop herself. Why are you a paralegal? He said. The question arrived without warning, without softening, without the usual professional wrapping that turned blunt things polite. It was not rude. It was simply direct in the way a very sharp knife was direct. It cut exactly where it aimed. She met his eyes. The partners at my last firm said I was too big for the role I was in. Something moved across his face, not surprise, something quieter. They meant it as a problem, he said. I know. It was not. She did not look away. She wanted to. The straightforwardness of the sentence, the absence of any performance in it, made it harder to receive than if he had wrapped it in something she could argue with. She said, because silence was gathering, and she did not trust it. It did not feel that way at the time. No, he said. Things rarely feel like what they are. He set the brief down, opened a folder beside it. I am assigning you the full Carver preparation, not just the brief. The witness prep, the timeline, the deposition support. She stared at him. That is a senior associate job. I am aware of what it is. I am a paralegal. You are currently a paralegal, he said. That is a temporary condition. She did not know what to say to that. She pressed her pen between both palms and made herself stop clicking it. You will report directly to me on this one, he added. Not to any of the associates. Directly. Okay, she said, because it was the only word her mouth produced. He nodded once. Done. Final. The conversation was over in his mind even as she was still sitting in the chair processing the beginning of it. She stood up, walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when he spoke again. Miss Osei. She turned. The footnote, he said. I looked for it in 2021. I did not find it. He said it the way other people said nothing in particular, flat and even, and without ceremony. Then he sat down behind his desk and picked up his phone, and the conversation was completely over. She walked out. Her heart was doing something embarrassing. She did not acknowledge it. Priya was waiting at the partition, with the expression of someone who had watched a film and was desperate to discuss the ending. How long were you in there? Priya asked. 8 minutes. He never takes 8 minutes. We were discussing the Carver brief. Priya looked at her with the particular focus of someone who was good at reading rooms and had just read one correctly. Right, she said slowly. The brief. Do not, Nadia said. I did not say anything. You were about to. I was going to say that your pen is in your hair, and you put it there without noticing. Nadia reached up. The pen was in her hair. She pulled it out. It is a stressful brief, she said. Sure, Priya said. She went back to her desk. The week that followed was the most difficult and most absorbing week of her professional life, and she had had some absorbing weeks. She had spent a night in a Glasgow law library sourcing a contract dispute that came down to 2 words. She had once gone 40 hours without sleep preparing for a hearing that settled on the courthouse steps. She knew how to work. She had been working since she was 15, covering shifts at the shop on her mother's bad weeks, doing homework in the back between customers, filing the shop's VAT returns by 17 because her mother found the numbers confusing. This was different. Every morning there was a new set of notes on her desk with a case number attached. Not instructions, notes, observations, questions framed as observations. The kind of professional communication that expected you to fill in the gaps yourself, that trusted you to understand what was being asked without being told. She filled in every gap. She answered every implied question. She left her own notes in the margin of things she sent back, her handwriting small and precise, flagging things she had noticed, asking questions of her own. He answered them. Every one. Usually in a line or two. Always exactly enough. It was the most unusual professional exchange she had ever participated in, and she could not decide whether she liked it or found it maddening. Both, probably, simultaneously and in equal measure. On Thursday, he asked her to stay late. She said yes. She did not think about it. By 10:30, the main floor was empty. The cleaning team moved through the lower levels. The city outside had gone dark except for the low amber glow of it, the constant London warmth that meant night but never quite dark. She was at the long table in the conference room with the deposition timeline spread across it, color-coded by witness, each segment annotated in her handwriting. She had been working for 3 hours without stopping. Her neck hurt. She was aware that she had forgotten to eat dinner and had been surviving on a mid-afternoon granola bar and determination. The conference room door opened. Raphael Voss set a coffee cup on the table beside her notes. Black. No sugar. No lid. She looked at it, then at him. He had already moved to the chair across from her and was opening his own copy of the timeline. "How did you know how I take it?" she said. He looked up briefly. "I noticed." 2 words. If she felt them the way you felt a temperature change, gradual and then all at once. She looked back at the timeline. She picked up the coffee. She did not say thank you, because something about the specific quiet of the room made thank you feel like the wrong size for the moment. They worked for another hour like that, side by side at the table with the city below them, going through the timeline, flagging inconsistencies, building the architecture of an argument together, without discussing the fact that they were building anything at all. He asked questions. She answered them. She flagged things. He considered them, usually nodded, sometimes said 2 words that reframed the whole section. It was the most efficient working relationship she had ever been in. It was also, quietly and without her permission, something else. Something she did not name, because naming it would require her to look at it directly, and she was not ready to do that. At nearly midnight, she capped her pen, gathered her pages. He was still reading. "I will finish the witness section tomorrow morning," she said. He looked up. He did something she did not expect. He looked at her with the same stillness he always had, but under it, just under it, there was something that was not quite professional, something that was simply human, something that said, "I see you working. I see the quality of it. I see you." It was there for 2 seconds. Then it was gone. "Good," he said. She picked up her bag, walked to the door. "Miss Osei." She turned. Again. 3rd time this week. She was getting used to being called back, and she was also deeply aware that getting used to it was not a safe thing to do. "You have not eaten," he said. She blinked. "I had a granola bar." He looked at her in a way that communicated exactly what he thought of that without using a single word. Then he reached into the bag beside his chair and set a wrapped sandwich on the edge of the table near the door. She stared at it. "There is a place on the corner that does late orders," he said. He was already looking at the timeline again. "I ordered when I came up." He had ordered her food, while she was working, without asking. She did not know what to do with that. She picked up the sandwich. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, not looking up. She went home. On the train, she sat with the coffee cup she had absently brought with her, which she only noticed when she was already on the platform. She turned it in her hands. The logo, the cardboard sleeve, the small, ordinary weight of it. The last man who had paid attention to how she took her coffee had used every small detail he knew about her as evidence that she belonged to him. He had catalogued her the way collectors catalogued things. He knew what she liked and what she feared, and he used both with equal confidence. She had spent a year recovering from that. Recovering was not the right word. She had spent a year rebuilding the parts of herself that had gone quiet during it. She was not doing that again. She looked out the train window at the dark tunnel and the brief flash of her own reflection. She looked tired. She looked more alive than she had in 2 years. Both things were true. She clicked her pen all the way home. The invitation arrived as a printed card left on her desk on Monday morning. Voss and Aldred annual dinner. Friday, the Langham. Black tie. Attendance required. The word required was underlined, not printed underlined. Someone had drawn a line beneath it by hand, in ink. She did not know who. She suspected it was the kind of firm where required meant required without the softening of an explanation. She told Priya she was not going. Priya told her she was, in fact, going. She told Priya to stop telling her things. Priya told her the firm had once lost a junior associate over a skipped firm dinner. Not fired. Lost, as in the associate had felt so professionally cold-shouldered in the aftermath that she had resigned within the month, voluntarily, with nothing else lined up. Nadia went. She wore a dress the color of midnight, because it was the only formal thing she owned that still fit, and because her mother had bought it for her birthday 2 years ago, and said, "Wear it somewhere worth being seen." She had not found the occasion until now. She walked into the Langham ballroom at 7:58, which was late enough to be composed, and early enough that no one could label it a statement. The room was everything she had expected from a firm like this. High ceilings, low lighting, the kind of flowers that cost more than her weekly shop, partners in clusters, their wives or husbands beside them with the careful smiles of people who had learned to perform ease at these events so well that it had become a second fluency. Nadia took a glass from a passing tray, stood near the edge of things, observed. She was good at observing. It was one of the things that made her good at the work. She could walk into a room and read its structure in 5 minutes. Who deferred to whom, who was performing and who was comfortable, where the real conversations were happening versus where the performance conversations were happening. She spotted Raphael Voss across the room before she had finished her first pass. He was standing with 2 senior partners, a glass in his hand, his face arranged in the particular expression she had come to recognize as his public face. Present, attentive, closed. He was listening to the man beside him, with the stillness of someone who was hearing everything, and cataloging it, and showing none of that process on the outside. He had not seen her yet, or he had seen her and had decided not to show it. With him, the two were difficult to separate. She moved toward the edge of the room, found a quiet spot near the bar where the crowd was thinner, and settled there. She was fine. She was comfortable. She had attended professional events alone before. She was a grown woman who did not need to attach herself to the nearest familiar face to feel safe in a room. The man who appeared at her left shoulder approximately 4 minutes later was not Raphael Voss. He was older, mid-60s, the kind of tan that came from expensive holidays rather than outdoor living. A glass of something amber in his hand. He stood too close. Not close enough to be obviously inappropriate. Close enough that she noticed it and adjusted slightly away, and he did not adjust. "You are the new paralegal," he said, with the tone of a man complimenting a piece of furniture he was thinking of purchasing. "I am a paralegal at this firm, yes," she said. "How are you finding it?" She turned to look at him properly. He had the eyes of a man who had never been told no in a professional context, and found this entirely normal. She had met this type before. She had a whole internal filing system for this type. "It is challenging and engaging work," she said. The professional answer. The safe answer. The answer that gave nothing. "Good, good." He leaned slightly toward her. "You know, I noticed your name on the Carver prep. That is correct. That is unusual, for a paralegal to lead that kind of prep." "It is. Raphael must like you," said with a particular emphasis, the kind of emphasis that was designed to make a person feel observed in an uncomfortable way. She looked at him steadily. "He trusts the work." "Of course." A smile. The smile of a man who had decided what the story was, and was not interested in an alternative version. "Still, it is good to have friends in high places." She opened her mouth to respond. She did not have to. Raphael Voss was suddenly there. Not dramatically. Not with announcement. He simply appeared at her right side, glass in hand, the way something solid and immovable appeared when you turned a corner. He did not touch her. He did not insert himself into the conversation with words. He stood beside her, the way walls stood. Present. Definitive. The older man's expression shifted. Not much. Just enough. "Aldred," Raphael said, a greeting that was also, somehow, a full stop. "Voss." The older man straightened slightly. The lean disappeared. The smile became something more formal. "Good evening." Raphael looked at his phone briefly. "I believe your wife is looking for you." She is near the entrance. A pause. Right. Aldred's eyes moved between them once. Then he smiled the formal smile again and moved away. Nadia watched him go. She waited until he was far enough. I did not need that, she said. I know, Raphael said. I needed it. She turned to look at him. This close, in proper light rather than fluorescent office lighting, she was aware of things she usually did not let herself be aware of. The line of his jaw, the way his posture was not stiff but simply settled, the way old furniture was settled, the kind that did not wobble and had never wobbled. She said, because she was going to have to say it, "Who is Aldred?" The other name on the door. She processed this. Your partner. For 15 years. And you just told him to go find his wife. I told him where his wife was, Raphael said. He made a choice. She almost said something. She stopped herself. She looked out at the room instead, at the clusters of people and the low expensive lighting and the flowers that cost too much. He said, dance with me. Not a question. Not an invitation with options. A direction. Quiet and even. The way all his directions were. She turned to look at him. That is not a question. No, he said. They stood there for a beat, and she understood that this was the moment. Not the first elevator, not the office, not the late nights or the coffee, or the sandwich, or the two words that had no business landing the way they did. This was the actual moment, and she could feel the weight of it sitting between them like a fact. She set her glass down on the bar. They moved to the floor. He danced the way she might have predicted if she had let herself predict it. Not showy, not stiff, careful, his hand at her waist with a deliberateness that made her aware it was a choice, that every inch of his attention was a choice, that nothing about this man happened by accident. She kept her chin up, kept her eyes level. She was not going to be undone by a dance at a firm dinner. She had more composure than that. People say you are ruthless, she said, because talking was safer than the alternative. People say things, he said. Are they wrong? He looked at her. Directly and completely, the way he looked at the cases on his desk, with the entirety of his focus. About most things, he said. The music shifted. Slower. She became aware of the distance between them, which was professional and appropriate, and she became aware of it precisely because she was aware of it, which meant she was thinking about it, which was a problem. She said, to cover this, you have been at this firm for 11 years. 12. Do you like it? He considered the question with the same seriousness he applied to every question. I am good at it. That is not what I asked. No, he agreed. It is not. He did not give her another answer. She did not push. They were quiet for one full rotation of the floor, and the quiet was the kind that had content, that was full of something neither of them was naming. Then he took one small step back, created space, the kind of space that meant something because it had not been there before. Professional. Clean. A decision. She felt it land. The deliberateness of the withdrawal. The fact that it was not avoidance but something more careful than that. They finished the dance as though nothing had happened, which was either very easy or very difficult, and she was not sure which. He walked her back to the edge of the room. A waiter appeared with 2 glasses of water. He took one. She took one. He said, the Carver deposition is Monday. I know. You are prepared. I am. He looked at her once more. Then he nodded and moved back into the room, back into the clusters of partners and conversations and the professional performance of all of it. She stood at the edge, her hand around the water glass. Her pen was in her clutch and she wanted it. Priya appeared from somewhere. You danced with him. It was one dance. People are talking. People, Nadia said steadily. Always are. She stayed another 40 minutes, spoke to 3 other colleagues, ate 2 things from a tray, was perfectly composed the entire time. She went home, took off her shoes, sat on her bed. Her phone lit up. Unknown number. She almost did not open it. She had rules about unknown numbers. She had put those rules in place for good reasons, for the kind of reasons you put rules in place when you have learned the hard way what happens without them. She opened it. The message said, you found the Whitmore citation before I did. I looked it up afterward. 2009. The misread is in 4 separate databases. Nobody catches it. She read it twice. Typed, "Who is this?" The reply came within seconds. "You know." She sat with her phone in both hands, her feet on the cold floor, the city outside doing its usual thing, indifferent and ongoing. She knew. She put the phone face down on the bed, picked it up again, put it down, picked it up, typed. It was a straightforward error once you followed the chain. He replied, "You are the first person to follow the chain." She stared at that for a long time. The room was quiet. Her coat was on the chair by the door, the dress still on, the shoes on the floor where she had stepped out of them. She had rules. She had them for a reason. She had rebuilt herself from a version that had not had rules, that had trusted the wrong kind of attention, that had confused being known with being safe. She was not doing that again. She put the phone on her bedside table. She was not doing that again. She turned off the light. The phone glowed once more in the dark. She did not look at it. She looked at the ceiling instead, at the faint pattern the streetlight made through the curtains. She looked at it for a very long time. She did not sleep for a while. She found out on a Wednesday. Not from him. Never directly from him, which she was beginning to understand was simply how he operated. The same way some buildings had no visible entrance until you knew where to look. She found out from the HR coordinator, Claire, who stopped by her desk at 11 in the morning, with a folder and an expression of bright professional cheerfulness that Nadia immediately distrusted. "We just need your sign-off on the fast-track enrollment paperwork," Claire said, setting the folder on the edge of the desk. Nadia looked at it. "I am sorry?" "The Associate Fast Track Program." Claire pointed at the top sheet. Name already filled in, department already assigned, start date circled in ink. Her name, her department, her start date. "I did not apply for this," Nadia said. Claire's bright expression flickered once, barely. "You were nominated." "By whom?" Claire's eyes moved toward the glass office at the end of the corridor and back again, the involuntary glance of someone who had been told not to say but whose eyes had not received the message. Nadia looked at the folder for a long moment. Then she stood up, left the folder exactly where it was, and walked across the floor. She did not knock. He was on the phone. He looked up when she walked in. His expression registered her presence, and the expression on her face with the same stillness it registered everything. And he said into the phone, "I will call you back." Then he set it down. She sat across from him. She did not want to sit. She sat because standing felt like a performance of anger, and she did not want this to be a performance. "You enrolled me in the Fast Track program," she said. "I nominated you. HR enrolled you. Without asking me. You would have said no." She looked at him. The accuracy of this did not help. "That is the point of asking," she said. He leaned back slightly in his chair, watching her the way he always watched things, with the total patience of someone who had learned to wait for the actual shape of a thing to emerge before he responded to it. "People ask when the answer matters to the decision," he said. "In this case, it did not. It was my decision. Professionally, it was mine." The room went sharp. She sat very still and felt the anger arrive, the good kind, the familiar kind, the kind that arrived like solid ground when everything else was moving. "You do not get to decide what I am ready for," she said. Her voice was level. The levelness cost something. "I did not decide what you are ready for," he said. "I told them what you have already proven." "Without telling me." "You have been proving it for 6 weeks, Miss Osei. The Carver precedent, the witness prep, the deposition questions you drafted that our lead associate borrowed without attribution." He paused. The pause had the weight of something that had been observed and remembered precisely. I noticed that also. She had not told him about the attribution. She had not told anyone. She had decided to absorb it, to file it under things that happened and move forward, because making noise about it required energy she preferred to spend on the work itself. He had noticed it anyway. She looked at her hands for a moment. She was gripping her pen without realizing she had picked it up. "You could have told me," she said. "You would have argued." "Yes." "And then," he said, "you would have found a reason to say it was too early, or the timing was wrong, or something else that had nothing to do with your ability, and everything to do with the fact that you are waiting for the part where things are taken away. She looked up. He said it without cruelty, without the dramatic delivery of someone making a point about someone else's psychology. He said it the way he said everything, flatly and precisely, as though it were simply an observation about a case in front of him, a fact he had noted and was now citing. She felt it arrive in the specific place where true things arrived, the place that was not chest or stomach but something in between. "You do not know me," she said. He stood, moved around the desk, not to her, just to the edge of it, standing at its corner, the way he had the first morning she came in here. Closer than a desk between them, not as close as close. "I am trying to," he said. The words landed and stayed there. She stood up. She needed the height. She needed not to be below him in a chair while this conversation was happening. She stepped back, and her shoulders met the floor-to-ceiling glass behind her. The city was at her back, cold and enormous and indifferent. He had not moved toward her. He had not trapped her. He was standing where he was standing, one hand now resting on the bookcase beside the desk, and the space between them was full of something that had been building since a Tuesday morning in an elevator. She looked at him. Really looked. Not the professional assessment she used when she walked into rooms, the quick inventory of posture and expression, and the structure of a person's attention. She looked at him the way you looked at something you had been deliberately not looking at, because you understood that looking directly at it would require you to decide something. He was not soft, that was the first thing. He was not the kind of person who offered warmth the way some people offered it, automatically and broadly, like heating that filled a room regardless of who was in it. What he offered was specific, a warmth that arrived because you had done something to earn it, because he had looked at you and decided you were worth the looking, and the decision had been made carefully. She had spent a year trying to recover from a man who had wrapped possession in the packaging of attention, who had said "I see you" so many times that she had eventually understood he had meant "I own you." This was not that. She did not know entirely what it was. She did not know if she was capable right now of knowing what it was, but it was not that. "The program starts in 3 weeks," he said. His voice was quiet. The room was quiet. The whole firm beyond the glass door was going about its business, and none of it was inside here. "I know," she said. "Are you going to sign the papers?" She held his gaze. The anger had settled into something else. Not gone, changed. It was still there, but it had moved to the back of the room, and was standing quietly, waiting. "I have not decided," she said. He nodded. One single nod. "That is fair." She looked at him for another moment. Then she walked to the door, her hand on the handle. "Raphael." She said his name. First name. She had never said it before. Not to his face. And the sound of it in the room did something to the air. Made it slightly different. The way a window does to a room when you open it. He looked at her. "If you do something like this again," she said, without asking, "you tell me after. The same day. Not via HR." He looked at her for one long moment. "Agreed," he said. She nodded. She opened the door and walked out. At her desk, she sat down. She opened a document. She stared at it. She clicked her pen 4 times. 5. 6. Priya appeared at the partition. "What happened?" "Nothing." "You look like something happened." "Please go back to your desk, Priya." Priya went back to her desk. Nadia looked at her screen. She read the same line 3 times and absorbed none of it. She opened the fast-track program document in a new tab. "Read it." It was a 12-month rotation. Real cases. Real courtroom support. A path that her last firm had told her was not for people at her level, which had been their way of saying was not for people like her. She had filed that away and kept working, and told herself the filing was strength. It was not entirely strength. She knew that. It was partly the waiting, the old waiting, the one that said, something good will be taken, better not to reach for it, better to stay low. She closed the tab. Opened it again. She thought about the 2009 footnote. She thought about the 48 hours she had spent on the Carver timeline, the nights at the conference table, the sandwich she had not been asked about, the coffee that had been exactly right without her telling anyone what right meant. She thought about a man who did not say unnecessary things, and who had stood in his office just now and said, "I am trying to," without flinching, without making it smaller. She pulled the folder toward her, found the sign-off sheet, picked up her pen, clicked it once. She signed her name, set the pen down, looked out across the open floor at the glass office. He was on the phone again, standing at the window, the city behind him. He did not look up. She went back to work. 3 weeks later, she was in the associate program orientation room with 9 other people who were all younger than her, or had more obvious credentials, or both, and she sat in the chair and thought, "I earned this. Not he gave me this. I earned it. He saw it. Those are 2 different things." She clicked her pen under the table where nobody could hear it. She smiled at no one in particular. It was, she decided, a start. 3 months had a shape, she discovered. The shape was not a straight line. It was not a clean arc, like the stories you told yourself about things when you needed them to make sense. It was a back-and-forth shape, the shape of 2 people who were both very good at their work, and very careful about the particular territory that existed between them, moving forward, and then being professional, and then sideways, and then working at 11 at night again, without naming what that meant. She stopped clicking her pen around him. Mostly. She was aware of it now. She moved it to her pocket instead. He noticed. He did not say so. She knew he noticed because he noticed everything, and because on the day she stopped doing it, he had looked at her once, and then looked away, and there had been something slight and complicated in the looking away. They had a system. It was professional and efficient, and could survive any examination, and within it, there existed a different and unspoken thing that neither of them had put words to. He brought her coffee correctly without asking. She left margin notes on case documents that were longer than necessary, personal rather than purely professional, things she was thinking rather than just things that were relevant, and he responded in kind, 2 lines here, 3 there, and those lines said more than most conversations she had with other people. One morning in November, she arrived to find that the Whitmore case citation had been formally written into the firm's internal research database with her name as the source. It was a small thing. She sat at her desk for a moment, with her hand flat on the surface. It was not a small thing. She did not go to his office. She sent a message. 2 words. "I noticed." A deliberate echo. His reply came within a minute. 1 word. "Good." She smiled at her screen in a way she was glad no one was watching. The Tuesday that everything shifted began the way Tuesdays usually began. She was in the associate program now, properly in it, attending briefings and sitting in on client calls and being given research tasks that were not quite at the level she was capable of, but were moving in that direction. She had decided to be patient about the speed of this. Patience was a newer skill. She was practicing it. Priya stopped by her desk at lunch. "I heard something," Priya said. Priya's "I heard something" had a range. Sometimes it meant interesting gossip. Sometimes it meant something that mattered. Her face said this was the second kind. "The associate program," Priya said, keeping her voice low. "There is a review meeting tomorrow, senior partners only." She paused. Aldred called it. Nadia was very still. About what? About the cohort. About costs. About whether the firm should be investing in the program at this level, given current client revenue. She heard what Priya was not quite saying. "Priya? He has been asking about who is in it, specifically." Another pause. "He asked Claire for your enrollment date." Nadia sat back. She had not forgotten the firm dinner. The lean. The eyes of a man who had decided what the story was, and was not interested in a different version. She had not forgotten the way he had moved away from her that night, and she had not forgotten that Raphael had made him move. Men like Aldred did not forget things like that. "How do you know this?" she said. "Claire," Priya said simply. "Claire told you." "Claire tells me things occasionally." Priya straightened. "I thought you should know." Nadia nodded. "Thank you." After Priya left, she sat for a long time with her pen in her hand, not clicking it, just holding it. She had been here before. Not at this firm, not in this specific room, but here, The specific sensation of something being built around you by someone who had decided you were inconvenient. The quiet administrative machinery of it. The way it never arrived directly. Never said your face or your voice or the fact that you corrected him in front of someone. Never said any of the true things. It arrived as budget concerns and program reviews and questions about cost effectiveness. She had been smaller the last time. She had not known yet what she knew now. She had absorbed it and left, and spent 6 months trying to understand what she had done wrong before she understood that the question itself was the trap. She was not going to be smaller about it this time. She was not going to go to Raphael. That was the thing. That was the thing she was clear about. She did not need him to handle this. She was not the woman at the bar waiting to be rescued. She had built a file in 3 months that spoke for itself. She had the Carver precedent, and the deposition, and the attribution that had been taken from her, and that she had said nothing about. And she had enough professional standing now to walk into that review meeting herself and make the case. She stayed late that night. She built a document. Every case she had contributed to in 3 months. Every measurable outcome. The Carver settlement figure. The Whitmore correction. And how many cases it had already been applied to. The timeline. The annotations. Her name on all of it. Clearly and accurately. Not aggressively but completely. At 9:30, she was still typing. The floor was quiet. The office at the end of the corridor had been dark for 2 hours. She had not expected him to be in. She had not wanted him to be in. She had wanted to do this alone, in the specific way that doing it alone meant doing it on her own terms. She heard the floor door open. She did not look up. It would be the cleaning team. It was not the cleaning team. She heard footsteps and felt, more than saw, the presence of someone at the edge of her desk. She looked up. Raphael Voss was in his coat. He had clearly come from outside, the cold still on him, his hair slightly less arranged than its office version. She stared at him. "You left hours ago." "I came back." She looked at him. "Why?" He pulled the chair from the desk across from hers and sat down. He looked at the document on her screen. He did not read it, but he looked at the shape of it, the length of it, the clear and deliberate architecture of it. "Aldred," he said. Not a question. "You knew," she said. "I found out today. And you came back." "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment. She turned back to her screen. "I am handling it," she said. "I built the document. I will go to the review meeting tomorrow and present my own case. I do not need you to intervene." "I know," he said. "Then why are you here?" He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet she had learned to read over 3 months. The quiet that meant he was choosing what to say, with the same precision he applied to everything. "I am here," he said, "because I wanted you to know that I knew, and that I am not going to handle it for you, and that I am aware you would not want me to." She looked at him. "And," he said, "because I also wanted you to know that if the review goes the way Aldred is planning it, I will be in that room." She held his gaze. "Not to fight my corner. No, to ensure the process is fair. That is different." She sat with that. The distinction he had drawn was precise and real. There was a difference between fighting her corner and ensuring the ground was level, and he had drawn it without being asked to. "Okay," she said. He nodded. He did not leave immediately. He sat there while she finished the document, which took another 30 minutes, and he read something on his own phone, and neither of them talked, and it was the most comfortable 30 minutes she had experienced in a long time. When she finally closed the laptop, he stood. "Go home," he said. "Sleep." That sounds like an instruction. It is an observation. She almost smiled. Almost. She pulled on her coat. He walked with her to the elevator. They stood beside each other while it arrived. The same elevator. The first elevator. The one where she had talked too much and he had told her so. The doors opened. They stepped in. The ride down was quiet. Not the first quiet, which had been the quiet of two strangers deciding whether to be polite to each other. This was a different quiet. The quiet of two people who had shared enough space to know what the other person's quiet sounded like. At the ground floor, they stepped out into the lobby. The security guard nodded. The revolving door led to the cold street. She stopped at the door. He stopped beside her. She turned to look at him. "Thank you," she said, "for coming back." He looked at her with the full, still quality of his attention that she had stopped trying to deflect and had started simply receiving. "Thank you for not asking me to fix it," he said. She held his gaze. 3 months of back and forth and careful and professional and late nights and coffee and margin notes and one dance and 2 words and all the things that existed between them that did not have a category yet. She took a breath. "What is this?" she said. Not the question she had planned to ask. It came out plainly, the way the real questions always came out when you stopped managing them. He looked at her for a long moment. "Something I am being careful about," he said, "because you matter more than the speed of it." She did not look away. She did not click her pen. She did not fill the silence with anything. She reached into her bag, found the pen, held it for a second. Then she held it out to him. He looked at it, then at her. "So I stopped clicking it around you," she said. "It embarrasses me." He took it. He held it in his hand. He looked at it, the way he looked at things that meant more than what they appeared to be. He did not give it back. She pushed through the revolving door into the cold November street, and the city was wet and lit up and ongoing, and she walked toward the tube and felt, for the first time in a very long time, completely the size of herself. Not too much. Not too big. Not too loud or too present or too difficult to digest. Just exactly herself, taking up exactly the space she was supposed to take up. Behind her, through the revolving door's glass, Raphael Voss stood in the lobby for a moment longer than he needed to. He put the pen in his coat pocket. Then he walked back to the elevator, back to the floor, back to the work. He did not go home for another 2 hours. When he finally left, the pen was still in his pocket. And the review meeting the next morning, which Aldred had planned carefully and managed with the confidence of a man who had always got what he wanted, ran into 3 things he had not prepared for. A document of measurable outcomes that spoke entirely for itself. A nominee who argued her own case with the precision of someone who had spent her whole career being underestimated and had turned it into the sharpest tool she owned. And a managing partner who sat at the table and said nothing at all, and whose silence, in this room, carried exactly the weight it always carried. The program continued. Nadia's place in it was confirmed before lunch. She texted Priya 1 word from the bathroom. "Done." Priya replied with 4 exclamation marks, which was very unlike her, and which Nadia found extremely satisfying. She went back to her desk, sat down, opened a new document. She reached for her pen. It was not there. She remembered. She smiled at her empty desk and picked up a different pen and got back to work. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had known that for a while now. It was very good, finally, to believe it.